Today's video for Jackson Warfield's Game Room is a compilation video. It's a full countdown of my top 50 games of all time. Now, obviously, this content's already on my channel, so there is just a repackaging, but to give some new content here, just tell a little bit of a story before we jump into the list. Before the top 10, I had this cold open idea for a while to do a Blade Runner reference. If no one gets what that is, that's what I was doing.
People wouldn't believe.
But while I was filming it, so you see, it was just like 10:30, 11 o'clock at night or so. It was cold. It was like maybe 31 degrees, I think it was. Filming it shirtless, and I had a watering can pouring water on my head. And I realized as I was wrapping up the little monologue that I had forgotten to grab the little lawn eagle flappy thing for the dove flying away effect. And so I finished up. I was like, crap, I got to go get that. So that was on the front of the house, at the front of the house. Now, it just so happens that I went to go get it. My neighbor, or one of my neighbors, there's a hockey team renting out my neighbor's house. That's a different story. Parked in the driveway with headlights facing right at the lawn eagle. So I had to grab it. I had no other option. I wasn't going to set this up again. So yeah, went right into, into the spotlight, picked up the lawn eagle. I decided against trying to make eye contact with the neighbor. My hope was if I didn't make eye contact with them, that the kid wouldn't, it was probably like 16, wouldn't look up from his phone. Because like when you look at people, like you feel like you can sense them looking at them. I thought I was like, all right, I can't look at him. But I have no idea if he saw me. He might have been just like, or he might have just been like, no idea. There's a half-naked bloody guy walking by. Guess we'll never know. Because remember, I was not only shirtless, but also had ketchup on my face. So it looked like I was with the lawn eagle, like I just murdered my family. And I was getting the lawn eagle as a pole to like finish the job or something. I didn't want to risk them calling the cops on me or anything. Although, I guess if I were really trying to go for content, I should have knocked on his window and tell him like, hey, park over there or something like that. And the guy would have like probably pooped himself. But I got the lawn eagle and then I finished the scene. And it was worth it because to this day, no one seems to have called the police on me. And to be clear, my whole family is still alive. And one day they're all going to be old enough to watch this video and they'll hopefully understand the Blade Runner reference. So that might take a lot longer because my youngest is only 2. So enjoy the top 50 and remember to subscribe if you want to see me kind of do more cold opens like that, I guess. I'd understand either way. Today, we're going to go through Jackson Warfield's top 50 games of all time, numbers 41 through 50, although in the opposite order. And I'm Jackson Warfield. When I first got a subscriber on YouTube, I got a call from Tom Vassell to congratulate me. I don't know how he got a hold of me, but he told me, you're officially a board game YouTuber now, and he looks forward to my top games of all time list. Told him I wasn't even planning on making one of those lists. He explained to me that there's this grande meeple that lives on Fireball Island. And all he does is watch top games of all time YouTube videos all day. And if he ever runs out of content, he'll start summoning board gamers to Fireball Island to be sacrificed into the volcano. I said, well, what if I just focused my channel on miniature painting? He told me he's already revealed too much, then tapped out the URL for the Pub Meeple ranking engine in Morse code and hung up. I haven't heard from him since. A few caveats before I start the list. First of all, if I have played only the app version of a game, I'm not gonna put it on the list because I can't really evaluate a game if I don't play it in person at least once. One example, I love the app version of Onirim, but I've heard that there's a lot of shuffling when you're actually playing the physical game, so I don't think I can judge that one yet. Second rule for this list. You see, I don't think that the fact that Michael Jordan is now over 60 years old and probably wouldn't be very good if he tried to play in the NBA affects his case to be the greatest basketball player of all time. And I think about board games in a similar way. Just because a game is old and maybe doesn't have the luster that it used to have doesn't necessarily mean that it falls off the top list. If a game has a 5-year period where it is by far your favorite game, I think that deserves to be considered in your top games of all time list. So for my list, it's less of a top games of the moment list and more of a top games going through history. And then as far as what counts as a game, which is a surprisingly difficult question to answer when you're doing a list like this. If a game has multiple editions, I count that as one game. If a game has a lot of expansions, all those expansions count as part of the base game. If a game has expand-alones, where you could play the expansions by themselves, or you have different base versions of a game that are effectively the same game, or continue the narrative story from one game to the next, I consider those to be the same game. For example, Star Realms and Star Realms Colony Wars, just Star Realms. Pandemic Legacy Season 1, Pandemic Legacy Season 2 and 3, Pandemic Legacy. This one might be controversial. Ticket to Ride Europe, Ticket to Ride Nordic countries. I just consider that to be Ticket to Ride. Now, some games that might have an expansion that can be used for both games, like Cyclades and Kemet, just because there's an expansion that links them, they're different games though. That's more of a gimmick than an extension of the same game design. There might be exceptions that make this seem like a silly rule, but that's what I've gone with here, and I think at least for the games I've chosen, it works. On the flip side, now, if a game has, say, a dice game version, that's a different game. Same with card game versions, dual versions, roll and write versions. These are all different games from the originals. And that might seem self-evident, but the reason I'm mentioning this is those miniaturized versions of games, for example, Pandemic Hot Zone and Ticket to Ride New York, I consider those to be part of the main game. And here's why. They're kind of like the opposite of an expansion, which I guess would make them a board game contraction. I don't know if that term is going to catch on, so we push for it. I guess anti-expansion is probably a better term. We don't need to belabor the terminology though. Give me 9 months, we'll come up with a better name.
Let's get him!
The way I see it, they take the game that you already bought and they just tell you what not to use. I know it's not exactly like that. It's close enough that I think it would be kind of frivolous to call it its own game. I think it's really just the faster version of the main game. So it's really part of the same game. All right, let's break the water on this list and get the party started. Number 50. Number 50 is a game I played for the first time this year, Splendor Duel. So separate from Splendor, and I'll mention Splendor Duel I actually have as higher than Splendor. So Splendor Duel is a 2-player version of Splendor, which is a game where you will alternate taking gems with the idea of using those gems to get more and more valuable cards, which are then also discounts on future cards. The mechanics that are introduced in Splendor Duel, which include scrolls that can be used for extra actions and some other gems that make the game flow a little bit better with 2 players, I think were great additions. It shows that Splendor Duel was made in 2022, and Splendor was made, I think it was 2014. Because Splendor was a great gateway game, but gets kind of dull over time. Although I did actually participate in one Splendor tournament at PAX East once, and I didn't move on to the second round. So I always liked Splendor, but Splendor Duel I liked even more. If Splendor Duel had come out in 2015 or so, I think people would be looking at it as one of the best 2-player games of all time, kind of like Seven Wonders Duel. But it came out in 2022, so it was a little bit lost in the crowd to an extent. But Splendor Duel is my number 50 game. Number 49, Seven Wonders. And to be clear too, this is not Seven Wonders Duel, just Seven Wonders. Seven Wonders is maybe my favorite drafting game, because I really enjoy the 7-player dynamic. It's my favorite 7-player game. Maybe there's not too many games to choose from there. Seven Wonders, I really like the fact that as you're playing the game, despite the fact that you're just playing the cards, you really feel like you are near the players, geographically near the players that are sitting next to you at the table. In Seven Wonders, you can use the resources of your neighbors, and you're competing for military points with your neighbors, but not the people on the other side of the table. So it's a great communal experience. I really like that aspect of Seven Wonders. I haven't played the most recent edition of the game. I have the edition before that, which has a ton of, best game awards on the box, arguably too many. But that's my number 49 game, Seven Wonders. Number 48, Galaxy Trucker. Galaxy Trucker is a game I actually don't really like playing the app version of. Galaxy Trucker I first played a long time ago. We're talking over 10 years ago, maybe almost like 15 years ago. This was one of the games that came out before the golden age of board games, which in my mind started around the mid-2010s, so 2014, 2015. It was one of those games that people that knew how awesome board games could be back in the 2010 time frame could bust this out and show you like, hey, look what you've been missing. And that's what one of my friends did with me. I really appreciate Galaxy Trucker because it has the 2 phases of the game. In Galaxy Trucker, you begin where you have a real-time game where you're racing with other players to grab ship tiles to build a ship in the middle of a table. It's a really fun aspect of the game. Part of the reason why I don't like the app is because that's half the fun, is kind of racing with your neighbors to grab ship tiles. And then once you've built your ship, you have to live with it. So it goes from a strategic game when you're trying to race and grab tiles to build your ship, to now your ship has to survive and you make a few decisions on what to do to try and survive a voyage where you're a space trucker trying to transport goods. And no one's ship is perfect, you have to make the best of it. In my opinion, it's a great game to simulate how in a lot of people's jobs you'll go from times when you're thinking strategically to times you're thinking tactically. It's good like manager training. And actually, the game had been falling lower on my list for time until I realized how much over the past year or two I've wanted to play it again. So it is the number 48 game of all time for me, Galaxy Trucker. Number 47, Magic Maze. I'll add here too, for games that have a kids version like Magic Maze, the kids version is also a separate game. So Magic Maze Kids is not included here. Well, Magic Maze, in my opinion, doesn't really need a kids version, although it does have a kids version. Magic Maze is a cooperative game. Everyone is working together to move pieces, not by everyone having their own pieces, little people, little barbarians and stuff to move through them all, but everyone has a rule they follow. For example, I might only be able to move all the characters north, and someone else can only move them west, and someone else can move them south and can use escalators or something like that. It is an excellent cooperative experience. I actually played it for the first time this year. I ran a game amongst also my daughter and her friends, which means you're talking about kids age 7 to 10 in this case. The 10-year-old, after playing the game a few times, he put Magic Maze on his Christmas list. If you've experienced something like this where you show a game, especially to a kid who's coming up to the age where they're just figuring out what they like, and you can get someone into board gaming and show them how much fun it can be, it's one of the better moments as a board game curator that you can have. I've done that a handful of times in my life, and I remember every single time that's happened. The fact that happened also probably raises Magic Maze on my list a little bit. Although I love cooperative games like that too. I love games where you have that type of excitement where you're not allowed to talk, but everyone kind of knows what you have to do, and sometimes you get into like a mind meld with your teammates, figuring out exactly how to work. It could be a little bit higher if there's a little bit more to the game. I haven't played the maximum security expansion yet, and maybe once I play that, I'll raise it up on my list. But as of now, Magic Maze is number 47. Number 46, Scattergories. Scattergories is a classic. This was one of the party games I'd play before I really knew what modern board games were. And even having learned about all these other games, Scattergories is still a great game. It's a pretty simple game. Everyone's trying to come up with words, and someone will roll a big die that will give you a letter. And you have a little card that has categories, and you have to come up, for example, I don't know, breakfast foods, and the letter might be B, so you say bacon. This game is fun, specifically for the controversial answers people will put through. You see, the way I've always played this is you have a council vote. If someone puts together a controversial answer, everyone will ultimately vote as objectively as they can, so you're kind of judged by a jury of your peers on whether or not your answer fits. We had one debate that I still remember to this day. The letter was I, and the category was things that go in the refrigerator. And someone said, ice. Does ice go in the refrigerator? Or does ice go in the freezer? Is the freezer part of the refrigerator? We debated this for like 10 minutes. Seems silly, but that could be really fun. You think about the arguments people make for that, and it's not even a game where you're trying to force arguments. It's just it comes naturally. Some people will get very frustrated with categories, and that can be a good and bad thing depending on how the person handles frustration. I actually had one where one of my friends we play with would normally get frustrated. We all conspired ahead of time to vote against one of his controversial answers that probably should have been approved. So once he came up with an answer, everyone kind of winked to each other and said, no, that doesn't work. He got really angry. I don't know if I would recommend doing that. You got to be careful who you're going to do that with. I know that probably makes me sound kind of evil, but trust me, it was funny. Categories, number 46. Number 45, Imperial 2030. Imperial 2030 is an economic game that looks like a dudes on a map war game. You see, Imperial 2030, everyone is playing as capitalists, and what you're doing is you are investing in different countries. And if you are the majority investor in a country, you get to control them, which involves also attacking other countries. You have aspects of the game like taxing colonies and things like that. If you don't control anything, you kind of control the Swiss bank. It's an interesting mechanic. Imperial 2030 was the #1 game for showing me how cool modern games could be. I mentioned Galaxy Trucker is one of those, but Imperial 2030 took it to another level because I grew up playing a lot of Risk. I actually don't think Risk is a terrible game if you play by like Secret Mission and the correct rules, but that's a separate topic. Didn't quite make the top 50. If you play Imperial 2030 like you're playing Risk, you're going to lose. And I did this, when I first played, I was going out of muscle memory. I was playing the game like Risk, and I kept losing. I'm thinking like, wow, this is really interesting. And I couldn't stop thinking about the game. Played it again, still couldn't quite figure it out. That's why I own it. It's just, I really enjoy playing games that break my brain. Could be a little bit higher if it were more accessible, because it is a little bit of a gamer's game, but not terribly so. So Imperial 2030 is number 45. Of note, I haven't played Imperial, which is the original version of the game. I've only played 2030. Number 44, Cascadia. Cascadia is a game that, I don't know if it's the artwork, just the way the game's pieces are made, but I always just, even though it can be a little bit of a heavy analysis game at times, I find very relaxing to play. Cascadia, you're building out a habitat, simultaneously also putting little animal tokens down in your habitat. You get points by having habitats that make sense. So like having, for example, having like large mountain areas or large water, wetland areas, while also having different rules every time you play on how animals score points. So for example, you might get a few animals in a line, or a few animals need to be in a group, or maybe they can't be touching each other depending on the animal. You got like foxes, bears. Very nice game. I played it for the first time this past year, immediately went on to my top 50. I think it's a great game because despite the fact that you have a variety of rules every time, it does not cause cognitive overload. It's like you're exploring different options without too many things needing to build on each other, so it never gets quite too complicated, but it's always interesting. So Cascadia is number 44. Number 43, Evolution. And this includes both Evolution and Evolution Climate. Evolution, A New Beginning, but that one isn't very good. But I don't really hold that against Evolution. Evolution is a game where you will be creating species. You're either going to be adding traits to species, or you're going to make species with a hybrid population. Basically, you're trying to get the most, animals while dealing with the fact that they all have to eat. So there's like a watering hole that your animals have to eat from. And some animals are going to be carnivores, which means they eat literally other animals that, well, sometimes your animals, but your friends' animals can be prey for yours, or yours can be prey for theirs. It's a fun game. My favorite memory of this game, playing this at a convention, I was there with a few friends who had not played Evolution before, so we went to where Evolution is being demoed. We all sat down and we started evolving our animals, and it just happens everybody involved carnivores. No one was eating any food in the water hole, and we were having trouble. We were running out of species to eat. And we asked the guy who was running the game, like, what do we do here? And the guy was like, I don't know, this has never happened before. But it's fun. I like games where you can, things can go off the rails a little bit without necessarily making the game just where one person just wins. Like, I think it's an interesting concept. I love the mechanics behind Evolution, which makes it my number 43 game of all time. Number 42, Dixit. Dixit is a game that's somewhat in the Balderdash-y kind of model. It's like a Balderdash, kind of an apples to apples kind of a thing. You take turns being the storyteller, and everyone has cards, and it's with really trippy artwork. Look at your card. If you're the storyteller and you tell a story about it, you put the card down. Everyone else puts a card down from their hand that they think can fit that story. You want to tell a story that's clear enough that some people will guess yours correctly, but not so clear that everyone will. It has to be properly vague, so only a few people will get it. Fairly simple game that can actually be played where you can do it with kind of any cards, especially any cards with interesting and trippy artwork. It holds the record for the game I played with the youngest person. With my 2-year-old we played because we would show him a card and just say a word. And that works. Believe it or not, it works. He would just say something from the card, and sometimes he'd be like, I wonder what he's talking about. He just said fox. Is he right on what a fox is? There's no fox out here. It actually is a secretly very good kids game. So it's kind of more of a party game style. Again, it's a lighter game. I've been playing it for years. Dixit is number 42. And the last one for today, number 41, Survive, Escape from Atlantis. Now, what's the new one? I gotta check. So Survive Escape from the Atlantis is the original game with multiple versions that I think first came out in 1982, so it's a surprisingly old game. Survive the Island is the newest version. I think Survive Space Attack is a reskinning of the same thing. Survive Escape from Atlantis / Survive the Island is a game where you have little meeples that are trying to get off a sinking island. While you're trying to move your meeples off the island, everyone's taking turns controlling little sea monsters that are gonna eat you, and then actually gonna crash your boats and things like that. I'm talking about whales or sharks. But what makes it fun is each of your meeples are worth a different number of points for getting them off. And your opponents don't know which of your meeples are valuable. So there's a little bit of a bluffing game going on here within a very tactical, very take that kind of a style game. And it also has a little bit of the cosmic encounter kind of feel to it of the winner is the one who does not appear to be a threat to everyone else, because you can be ganged up on it in this game. But the way the mechanics work, very rarely will that actually happen, because the second you start appearing like you're losing, people immediately move their attention to someone else. It's a great game. Play with the expansions, the 2 little expansions. You have the dolphin one and the squid one. I don't know that the expansion necessarily have added that much to the game. I'd be curious to know what's been done with the newest version of it and how that has changed. I haven't played that yet, but Survive Escape from Atlantis is number 41. Number 40 for the greatest board games of all time is Castles of Burgundy. Castles of Burgundy is a Euro-style game. It doesn't really work like a worker placement game, or like a lot of them. In Castles of Burgundy, you're trying to build out your castle and the surrounding. There's a cat outside my window. What on earth? Hold on. This cat before, that's not my cat. Oh, there he goes. Castles of Burgundy, where you're building out a castle that is as nice as possible for the stray cats. So Castles of Burgundy is an interesting game. It plays out where you have a lot of dice rolling, and that controls what types of additions you can make to your castle homestead. It's a moderately complex game. It's different than any real worker placement game that I've played. I think it's kind of unique. I haven't played necessarily all of the Stefan Feld games, but this one is obviously the most famous of his and the one most people will be familiar with. It's funny. Part of the reason why I really like this game is it was kind of the gateway game to beyond gateway games for my wife. You see, the game is like a complexity rating on Board Game Geek of around 3. If you have only played games like Catan and Pandemic, it might seem like a lot. First time I played this game with my wife, she didn't like it. It was too much. Then after playing a few other games and going back to it, she was like, this is great. I was able to watch her go from someone who was barely aware of some of these games that I was, continuing to compile on shelves. That was like 7 or 8 years ago. Now she'll play anything that I put out. She'll play a lot of the games I put out there because I will say like, hey, you didn't like Castles of Burgundy at one time and look what happened. So Castles of Burgundy is an important game for me. It's an important game for the Warfield household. So Castles of Burgundy is number 40. Number 39. The Lord of the Rings, The Confrontation. This won't be the last Lord of the Rings board game on the list. The Lord of the Rings is easily my favorite fantasy setting or fantasy property, fantasy universe. Probably my favorite universe of all categories, not just fantasy. And it's a great one for gaming in different ways. What Lord of the Rings Confrontation is it's a Stratego-style 2-player game. You have one player as the Fellowship trying to dip the ring in Mount Doom, and you have one person is effectively Sauron and is trying to get the ring bearer before they drop the ring in. Believe it or not, it's possible to make a Stratego-style game that actually seems to fit the Lord of the Rings story. You see, a lot of Lord of the Rings board games, what they'll do is it'll be asymmetrical, so it'll be good versus evil, and the win conditions will be slightly different for each. And if the game is designed well, you at least get that asymmetrical dynamic. You don't necessarily feel with a Stratego-style game that you're in the movie. You get that dynamic and you know you're playing a Lord of the Rings game because of it. The Lord of the Rings Confrontation is one of my favorite implementations of this classic Lord of the Rings style format. Strange thing, I've actually somehow never played Stratego. I had 2 siblings too. My younger sister, they weren't really gamers. Growing up, I played a lot of games of Risk against myself. Number 38, Stone Age. Stone Age is a worker placement game. In a lot of ways, it is the entry point into worker place games. Stone Age is a relatively simple game. Each player is controlling a tribe of Stone Age cavemen, and you send them to do different things each turn. You might send them to go get food, you might send them to go get gold. Depending on how many cavemen you send, you get a better chance of rolling dice and coming up with gold. For example, you send a caveman to go get gold, you're not guaranteed to get gold. Each caveman is effectively one die that you have to roll. Your total number adds up to, I think gold off the top of my head, you need, I think to total up to 6 to get a piece of gold. So you need to send multiple cavemen to make sure you get it. And you have to feed your tribe every turn. That's how Stone Age plays. It's a great light worker placement game, and it's especially good if you want to introduce someone to the concept of worker placement game. If you don't know what that is and you're watching a video like this, worker placement games are basically action selection games, but you use little workers to reserve action, so it's much more immersive than just saying like you have a bunch of things you can do in a turn and only one person can do it. So Stone Age is great for that. I've also played the kids version, which is a separate game, which doesn't, I really would have wished that they had a kids version of a game that was kind of a worker placement style game, because my first Stone Age doesn't really have any worker placement in it, which is kind of unfortunate. So number 38 is Stone Age. Number 37, Cyclades. I will pronounce it as Cyclades because that rhymes with Hades. I don't know if it's the correct way to pronounce it. It could be, I guess, Cyclades or Cyclades or Kyclades. Kyclades? Cyclades. Cyclades is a Madigo game from the mid-2010s, or early 2010s, really. Actually, this might be 2008. Cyclades is the first of a series of games, which I actually have kind of lined up together over here. Is that on screen? But let me turn this, because I can do that. So, you see, I got it right next to Kemet and Inish. Inish, I'm more confident on how it's pronounced. Cyclades is a game where it's an area control, dudes on a map style game. All the players are controlling their own little armies. But the way the game works is there are 2 phases to each round. The first phase is where you bid for the favor of gods. So, for example, Ares or Zeus. And the second phase of each round is where you actually do things. And what you can do is based on which god you won the favor of. So if you win the favor of Ares, you get to move your troops across land. If you get to win the favor of Poseidon, you get to do stuff with your ships. And so it's nice bidding and tactical area control style game. Great combination of the two, and actually works surprisingly well with 2 players, because all you have to do is you effectively get to bid for 2 actions per turn instead of just 1. My favorite time playing this took a long time to play because of the group that we were playing with, and we had one guy who had a chance to win and he kept passing on it for some reason. I don't know why. But it's a great game for the people that are, say, used to Risk and need something a little more interesting, that they still are going to have some understanding of how to play and how to win. I mentioned in the last video, number 45 for me is Imperial 2030, and part of the reason why I like that game so much is because it broke my brain and I had to figure out, relearn how to play the game after having played Risk and then jumping into Imperial 2030. Cyclades is a little bit of a smoother transition. Plus, the theming is excellent. You got the miniatures in there, the Greek miniatures. You have that one expansion, if you have the first editions of the games, you have the one expansion where you have monsters that you can use for Cyclades or Kemet, which is a nice little thing, although it's a little bit frustrating to decide which box to actually store them in. I think I store them in Cyclades because I like the game a little bit more. Spoiler, Kemet's not ahead of it. Overall, Cyclades is great. It's one of the games that I added to my collection very early on, too, in my obsession with board games. So Cyclades is number 37. Number 36, War of the Ring, 2nd edition. Of all the games on my top 50, one game I have only played once, and it's War of the Ring. And that is a bit of a strange thing, because the fact that I've only played it once can make it seem like the game is ranked too highly, because after all, I've only played it once. How can I rank it so high? And you could also say it's not ranked highly enough because I've only played it once. I haven't fully appreciated it yet. I think 36 is kind of fair for those considerations. You see, the one time I played War of the Ring, it was played over the course of 5 nights. I played with my wife. I think it was 5 nights, partially because she was pregnant with our second kid. It was that night, you know, fatigue is what it is. My wife, who's also a Lord of the Rings buff, she was actually one that got me into it way back in the day. So War of the Ring is maybe the best technically designed board game that exists. The question is just, how playable is it and how learnable is it? Because it's kind of a masterpiece. What it does is it's a card-driven and dice-driven game that somehow allows you to follow the events of the Lord of the Rings somewhat closely. I mentioned this in my Lord of the Rings a card game retrospective. A lot of board games that are based on Lord of the Rings have to either go for immersion, which makes you feel like you're in the movie, or agency, which lets you do whatever you want, which means do what could be different than the movie. What War of the Ring does is it starts you where the movie starts. You will veer off the main storyline almost certainly during the course of the game. But then somehow, despite everything going on in the game is like a complexity factor of 4 on Board Game Geek, come down to the same ending where like there's a chance of each side winning. That's not to say that what you've done in the middle of the game doesn't matter, because it does. You know, the shadow player, so that's the, you know, the bad guys, are they going to complete this siege and take over a stronghold, or is the Fellowship going to actually destroy the ring? It's not clear what's going to happen. You're drawing tokens from bags to see what you get on Mount Doom. It's a great game for that. I'm genuinely stupefied at times at how the game works so well. I have the expansions for it just because I love it. It's almost a collector's item for me. I have the Battle of 5 Armies too. I'm looking forward to playing it again and eventually playing the expansions, and I may even do a video, but doing some basic painting with the War of the Ring, like for example, at least just painting the rims, or maybe doing a step-by-step on how to start painting them without leaving you at a point where you wish you had stopped earlier, because now you have to either finish it or go back and undo all the paint job that you've done. Painting a board game, it can be a little bit nerve-wracking. You've never done it before. That might be a future video, but that's a separate topic. War of the Ring, number 36 game for me all time. Can easily see it going up higher in the list. Number 35, Ethnos. Ethnos, I've only played the first edition of. The newer edition of the game, I haven't heard amazing things because apparently they went into weird forms of iconography that are a little bit challenging. But Ethnos, easiest way to describe this. So you're drawing cards every turn and you're using sets of cards to claim territories, and you're trying to lay claims on territories. And you're playing like this over the course of several rounds. So while you're looking at what regions are being controlled on the map with these nice little discs that stack, that are very nice little components. You're also paying attention to the other players and trying to figure out where they're going to put their influence next. You have to decide whether or not you're going to wait for certain sets, or whether you put smaller sets of cards together and go grab territories earlier. Ethnos is a great game. When you play it, it screams that it needs some sort of a IP style licensing. Like the fact that this wasn't a game based on, you know, a Song of Ice and Fire or anything like that seems like a missed opportunity, because it's generic fantasy. Like super generic fantasy. There's got to be some IP out there that was ready to sell the rights for this game. But yeah, no, Ethnos, it's a good game. I recommend if you can find the first edition, I recommend that. Second edition, I don't know yet. But Ethnos is number 35. Number 34, Mysterium / Mysterium Park. Mysterium Park as the board game contraction.
Should've, would've, hadn't, ma'am, 'twas. Oh, they're getting closer together.
Or the anti-expansion, kind of the streamlined version of Mysterium, I think might be the better game, but they're effectively the same game, just done a little bit differently. Mysterium and Mysterium Park are both hidden information style games, where you're trying to, one person is trying to communicate with the rest of the table based on trippy cards. The cards that you're using for this are similar to Dixit. But the reason why I have Mysterium and Mysterium Park higher up on my list than Dixit is because Mysterium gives the players a chance more so to cooperate and talk about what the images that in this case is the ghost, that the ghost is actually sharing with everybody, which those can be really funny discussions because it's amazing how different people can key in on different aspects of a card. So if you look at a Mysterium card, someone might key in on like a little dude in the corner. Someone might focus on the fact that there are ladders. I remember playing this once and someone was obsessed with anything that had a ladder. It was like, the ladder, that's got to be the whole point of this card. And I was a ghost for that game, and the ladders were completely off base. Mysterium Park streamlines Mysterium. The game kind of needed a little bit of streamlining, but in some ways it loses some of its luster. There are some games where the fact that they're not streamlined actually makes them more fun games because you just have a lot more things going on. And maybe the theme doesn't always match the mechanics perfectly, but you get to do a bunch of stuff. You get to play with your nice components. The game takes a little bit longer. It's a more communal experience. Mysterium Park is almost too streamlined. You can get the whole thing done in like 20 minutes or so, and you've kind of lost the chance to live in the ambiance of like, what's this ghost trying to tell us? A lot of games like Mysterium struggle for getting a theme to perfectly fit the mechanics. So for example, in Mysterium, it is a little bit strange that you have a ghost that is trying to communicate a different murderer to each player, and in Mysterium Park, a ghost is trying to communicate a different innocent person to each player and communicate like where the crimes did not occur. It's difficult to find a theme that perfectly replicates one person picking images to try and communicate things to other players on what to do. If anyone could come up with a way to theme that replicates how someone would actually act in a game, like I don't know why a ghost would be doing that. If you can figure out a way to do that, contact the designers of Mysterium and make them make a third version of it, because I'm not quite sure how to do it. To be fair, I haven't really thought about that much either. I just know it can be done. So Mysterium and Mysterium Park, number 34. Number 33, Blood on the Clock Tower. Blood on the Clock Tower is a game that is a little bit tough to get your hands on. It is a social deduction game where everyone in the game, I just sneezed, so if I'm look like I'm about to cry, it's not because I like Blood on the Clock Tower quite that much. Blood on the Clock Tower, it's a social deduction game based on the Assassins game, where you have one person in the circle who's a murderer, and everyone's trying to figure out who that person is. Blood on the Clock Tower adds so many layers to it that you need someone to actually be running the game. So you basically have a game master. If that doesn't sound appealing to you, I'll just say that there's no other way to get it to work. And what it does with everyone having individual roles and the way the game plays out over, in this case, several rounds, it's the best social deduction experience you can have. The only reason why it's not higher in the list is because it takes a bit to get going. The game master needs to understand the scenario and be able to run the game in advance. And you need to have a good number of people to get it to work. You can't, it's not like One Night Ultimate Werewolf, realizing Werewolf is actually the game that it's kind of based on. Assassins is actually a different game. Given that not everybody's going to go in knowing how to play, the person running the game needs to be ready to do it. But this is the kind of game where I'm excited the next time I say have a bunch of friends over to play a game, to do the thing where you walk into the house and the game is now begun. We're all going to sit in a circle. They're going to turn the lights off. Going to be candle lights, things like that. It's going to be cool. My favorite moment from the game, I was playing a scenario where I was effectively like an archer. And my ability was once during the game, I could just kill someone. That was it. If I killed the bad guy, great. I think it was the imp we were going for here. And at one point during the game, I was convinced that I knew who the imp was. And I was like, this is my shot. So I stand up, pull back my imaginary bow. So you have 15 seconds to explain to me why I shouldn't loose this arrow. I was trying to be more on theme. I was playing it with like kind of strangers, so it didn't go off the best. It was fun for me. Yeah, Blood on the Clock Tower, number 33. Number 32, Deception, Murder in Hong Kong. Deception, Murder in Hong Kong is very similar to Mysterium in the way it works, but the goal is different. So Deception, Murder in Hong Kong, one player is the forensic scientist.
I don't get along with people.
Who is the person who knows which of the other players committed a crime. Basically, everyone are like policemen at a police precinct. And one of them is, the dirty cop. And the forensic scientist knows this and for some reason can't talk. I don't know. The theme, like I said, with Mysterium, the theme for these kind of games can be a little bit tough. The forensic scientist is trying to give signs to the rest of the cops on who the actual dirty cop is. And all the different cops are making claims based on what they're seeing. Everyone has like a pile of evidence in front of them. And they're going to see this person has a knife, this person has a katana, so who is it going to be? And so now you get into a social deduction aspect where people are trying to bluff and act like they're not the murderer when they are, or when they're not, which can make it hard to do. Deception Murder in Hong Kong is easier to get to the table than Mysterium. The theme fits a little bit better, even though it's still a little bit honky. In Deception Murder in Hong Kong, when you think you know who it is, you basically have to put your badge on the line, which means you got one guess, and if you get that guess wrong, that's your last official guess in the game. You can still play and make discussions, but you can't make an official guess to try and win the game anymore. Play with a lot of players too. So if you need a game that can play easily 8 players, it's Deception Murder Hong Kong is the game for that. I keep hoping that another Deception game has come out because Deception Murder in Hong Kong implies that there's going to be another Deception game. I'm not sure that one has. Let me check. Yeah, all I can tell is that you had the Undercover Allies expansion. Hopefully another one comes out. Maybe they can figure out the theming this time and how to get a theme to perfectly fit the whole imperfect communication mechanic. Deception Murder in Hong Kong is number 32. And number 31, Raiders of the North Sea. I haven't played all of the Warfield games, worker placement style games that are out there. There are a lot of those. You know them when you're looking at it. So we have Raiders of the North Sea. I've played Architects of the West Kingdom. We have like Viscounts of the West Kingdom, Scholars of the South Tigris. There's a lot of these. Raiders of Scythia is out there too. Raiders of the North Sea and Architects of the West Kingdom are the ones that I've played. I've played Raiders also with all the expansions. I like Raiders of the North Sea, partially because I'm a bit of a sucker for theming, and I like Viking theme. I don't necessarily think I am a Viking. I'm like 1/8 Norwegian or something like that. But I like how Raiders of the North Sea works. It's a place a worker, take a worker kind of a thing, which I think it was one of the first games to have a mechanism like that. Part of what I really like about the game is you're building out a boat, like a crew of Vikings, and the artwork for these Vikings is really good. I like the team building, and then you go in and you go to raid a settlement and you go get the stuff, and there's a little bit of dice rolling, a little bit of chance in there, but not too much. It's a fun game. I like it more than Architects of the West Kingdom, partially because of the theme. I mean, Architects is an interesting game because you also have the whole arresting of your other friends' meeples thing, which is a fun mechanic. I think I have to play that a little bit more, though. I don't feel as compelled to try and play it as I do Raiders of the North Sea. Raiders of the North Sea, the expansions are nice additions too. For example, in the Fields of Fame, you get a lot stronger Vikings that you can add to your crew. It's funny, Champions of Midgard and Raiders of the North Sea came out around the same time. I didn't like Champions of Midgard as much. I preferred the cards representing your crew instead of the dice, like in Champions of Midgard. Champions of Midgard isn't a bad game. I got stomped when I played Champions of Midgard, which might have hurt my opinion of the game a little bit. I usually don't mind losing, but I don't know. I have to give that game another try. But a lot of people think that Champions of Midgard is their favorite of the Viking-themed worker placement raiding games. Raiders of the North Sea is my choice there. By the way, Raiders of the North Sea also, I like the app quite a bit. It pulls it off. There are some board games that have an app version where it either seems like, you open it up and you're like, I can't do this. It's too small, or like it takes too long to learn the game, or like the tutorial takes a while. Raiders of the North Sea, I found you can kind of get up and running fairly quickly. Raiders of the North Sea is number 31 all time. Number 30 is Lost Cities. Lost Cities is probably the smallest conceptually game on the list. Lost Cities is a 2-player game, very tactical, where you have a shared deck and all the cards exist once in this deck, and you don't know what your opponent has. You're trying to place the cards in order, but you can only go one way. So if I place like a green number 2 down, then I can then play a green number 3, and then I can play a green number 7. But once I get to 7, I can go back to 6. You have 5 suits, 5 different colors, and cards numbered 2 through 10. You can also discard cards and then pick cards out of the discard pile. You're trying to always figure out what your opponent's doing. It's a Reiner Knizia game, so you can imagine what this is like. It's one of those very mind meldy. No, it isn't. It's not mind meld. That's not the right word. You're always trying to get into the head of your opponent. And if you like 2-player dueling style games like that, it's great. It's also one of those where there's some risk management, because if you start putting cards into a color, you basically start at a deficit. The Lost Cities theme doesn't really make any sense. It's kind of just so that the game has a theme. It tries to say that as you put more cards down, you're exploring more into a lost city, and the images get more and more clear the higher number you get. But the theme doesn't work. It's really more of an abstract game, but it's a fun card game. It's a very easy game to bust out. Don't have time to teach a new game in a night, and you want to play with your significant other or a friend. And it has an app version too. It's not bad. Lost Cities, number 30. Number 29. Treasure Island. Treasure Island is an asymmetrical game where one player is Blackbeard and all the other players are pirates that are trying to find Blackbeard's treasure. Blackbeard's job is to reveal information about his treasure in a way that it keeps it vague enough that no one can figure it out. And if he lasts long enough without anyone figuring it out, he will break out of his prison from which he is communicating from and then try to get the treasure. And if he gets to it, he wins. Here's the secret of the game. All the pirates individually won't have enough information to find the treasure. But if they put their heads together, they could do it no problem. But it's not cooperative, though. Only one person wins. Only one of these pirates wins. It really comes down to how much do those pirates want Blackbeard to lose. So if you're a player where your friends always want you to lose, maybe don't be Blackbeard for this one. But if you are the only one that knows the game, maybe you should be Blackbeard. It's a really fun game. It uses that like clear, as the British reviewers say, acetate kind of overlay kind of a thing. So it's got really nice components. The box is really nice. When I got the expansion, the insert, even getting rid of the insert, it's that's the only painful thing about the game for me is combining everything into the main box requires you to kind of do away with the original packaging, which is unfortunate. But if you care that much about a game, it's a good game, right? Treasure Island is my number 29. Number 28, The Crew. And the version of The Crew that I've played is The Quest for Planet 9. So The Crew is a trick-taking game. It's a cooperative game. And it doesn't make a lot of sense when you first explain it to people, unless they played a lot of trick-taking games. You're going to play a game basically of like spades. One player, the dealer, has to be the one to get the pink 5. And it's like 4 suits, kind of like a normal deck of cards. Once you complete that mission, then you get harder one. Green 6 has to go to the player to the dealer's left, and then the dealer has to get the green 2. You keep playing, you keep making it harder, and you can't talk about your cards while you're playing. So it's a great cooperative experience like that. In part 2 of my Lord of the Rings, the card game retrospective, I talked about one of the ways to make a cooperative game work and make it so that it's not just one person telling everyone else what to do, is to make the game sufficiently complex so one person can't just tell everyone what to do. Well, there's another way you can make a cooperative game work and avoid the quarterbacking problem. It's by having a game with hidden information. You literally don't know what your other players know. And that can be done poorly. I thought, for example, like Hanabi isn't a great game. It's just a matter of how much you want to kind of try to cheat in that game. The Crew does it excellently. In fact, when I first time I busted out The Crew, 2 of the other players took pictures of the game because they had to go buy it. It was an excellent game. The Crew is number 28. Number 27, Dominion. Dominion could have been higher on the list if I played it earlier in its lifespan. See, I got to Dominion in the late 2010s, and Dominion actually had been around a lot by that point. Dominion is the original deck building game. And I say deck building as a separate thing from deck construction. Deck building being where you build your deck throughout the course of a game, and that's the mechanic of how the game works. Deck construction being like how you build a deck before you go play a game of Magic the Gathering. Dominion effectively just became a mechanic. It was the deck building mechanic. That's all the game really is. What makes Dominion a game is just the fact that you have a lot of different cards to play with. The specific way that Dominion deploys deck building is actually a pretty vanilla thing. So you start with 10 cards, 3 of which are points cards, so they're kind of dead cards in your hand, and the other 7 are money cards. And you're trying to buy cards, and you have 10 action cards to choose from in a game. And you can buy better money cards, and you can buy better points cards, and the idea is you want to get a good engine going where you can buy a lot of cards, but you don't waste space in your deck on points cards until the end of the game, so that if you time that up well, you'll be able to get the most points and you won't have slowed yourself down. The way the game expands, there are a lot of expansions for Dominion. What they do is they add basically more action cards. So I've played Dominion 2nd Edition. I have Dominion Intrigue and Dominion Prosperity. And I kind of don't want anything else because that's already a lot of action cards to choose from. Dominion is a lot of fun. And sometimes if you want to play a game, you just want to play Dominion. If I had played the game from when it came out, which I think was, I'm going to guess is about 2008, I could easily see this being higher in the greatest games of all time list. If I had to rank the greatest games of all time for like other people, Dominion would probably be higher in the list. For me personally, I really like Dominion. I played a lot of Dominion, but there are other versions of the deck building type mechanic and more complete games, in my opinion, based around deck building that I enjoy more and have actually played a lot more of. Dominion also, it could be done a little bit better with the theming and the artwork. It kind of is crappy artwork. So yeah, Dominion, it's number 27. Number 26, Carcassonne. Carcassonne is another game like Dominion where if I were ranking the board game community's greatest games of all time, it would be up there. Carcassone's been around since, I think, the year 2000.
He's heating
And
up.
it's a tile laying game trying to add to cities and roads that are getting built out and use your meeples to claim items of interest on the map for points. And you're trying to finish buildings, but also make sure that your friends can't finish outcrops of your board before you do. Carcassonne is a great game. It's one of those games we actually kind of take for granted now, too. If you were super into board games in the early 2000s, your games to choose from were probably, Catan, El Grande, Puerto Rico, Carcassonne. I mean, I would be playing Carcassonne all the time there with those games to choose from. And I still enjoy it. If I see a Carcassonne expansion for a good price, I'm probably going to buy it. I've made the mistake with Carcassonne where I've also bought expansions for both the first and second edition of the game, which have almost no difference, but they changed the fifth or the sixth player color from pink to gray, or from gray to pink, so they don't match. So I kind of screwed that up. So I bought the first edition of the game, so I had something to put my expansions with, which is financially not something I would recommend. But I wouldn't do that if I didn't care a lot about my copy of Carcassonne. Mists over Carcassonne actually included in this entry for Carcassonne. Yeah, Mists over Carcassonne. So Mists over Carcassonne makes it a cooperative game, and it does a good job of it. It's also, Mists over Carcassonne is also an expansion to Carcassonne that can be played on its own. So I count it as part of the Carcassonne entry. So to be clear, number 26 is Carcassonne and Mists over Carcassonne. Number 25, Pitch Car. Pitch Car is also a game I really wish I had discovered earlier so that I could have gone ham on the expansions. I like playing it. I can play with my 4-year-old. Good flicking game like that. I actually play with my 4-year-old, and I play it with my 4-year-old and some other friends and friends' parents and stuff, and he won. And that was a good thing because he's really competitive. So Pitch Car is a dexterity game where you're flicking your little race cars, which are really just little circles, around the track. You got one flick at a time. You're all taking turns. And you got a nice track that has walls to it. You can make a customized track. There's a lot of expansions. You also have Pitch Car Mini, which is smaller, but then there are ways you can combine Pitch Car with Pitch Car Mini. Man, I really wish I had found Pitch Car when these were still more available, because it's tough to get a lot of the Pitch Car expansions now. And I'm one, given that you look at my collection of some games like Hero Escape, I'm someone that goes all in on games that I really like. I'll just buy the expansions. I'll just be like, give me everything. And then I'll try to play with it, and even if I don't, I'm still happy that I have the option.
So we have it.
So we have it. That way we have it. That way you have it.
I like Pitch Car because I like those racing style games. Sometimes with modern games, I feel like you're missing some of those old school style, just who's going to get around the board first. I don't like roll and move games, but I like the concept of racing. It's a fun dexterity game too, and sometimes that's exactly what you want. So Pitch Car is number 25 with a wish that I had played it more, and I wish it were higher. I really do. Number 24. Telestrations. Telestrations is one of the best party game concepts ever. Telestrations is the game of telephone, but with images. The first time I ever played Telestrations, I was in tears laughing. So the way it works is everyone starts with a prompt and everyone draws something on their own. You hand the drawing then to the person to your left, and you get the drawing from the person from your right. And you try to recreate what the prompt is. And obviously you're not going to get exactly right because no one's drawing is perfect. And even if they were perfect, it's not obvious always what the prompt was. And then you pass the new deformed prompt off to your buddy, who then has to draw based on that prompt. And by the time you go around the table, things from like falling off a cliff to the fiscal cliff is real to money doesn't buy happiness. And then you get like a sad piggy. Like it's really funny how it can go. It's another one that kind of people take for granted now too. Like there are other versions of the game, like Cranium Scribblus just steals the idea. I don't know how they got away with that. I think there are other twists you can do on the game, but at its core, it's just a great party game. It's a game that everyone's kind of played by this point. I mean, let's be clear, like top 24, that's a really good game. Telestrations is number 24 all time for Jackson Warfield. Just gonna introduce myself in the middle of the list. Number 23, King of Tokyo / King of Tokyo Origins / King of New York. King of Tokyo is a game that nailed it the first time, in my opinion. So King of Tokyo is a Yahtzee-style game. You're trying to, smash your friends with your standee, which should be really cool if ever miniatures, but they're just standees. Smash your friends by rolling dice. The center of the table, which is Tokyo in King of Tokyo. You can step into Tokyo, in which case you can kind of just like mash everybody from Tokyo, but you can't heal there, so if you take too many hits, you gotta leave. And you're rolling dice that can roll up either smashes or healing results, or just generic numbers for scoring points. King of Tokyo is a nice, easy game to play. It's a lot of fun, especially for people that are only used to games like Monopoly. and you really show them else something besides Catan or Ticket to Ride. The reason why I like King of Tokyo much more than King of New York, and I think some people have talked about this before. I mentioned with King of Tokyo how you have some numbers and you just get points from them. So for example, if you roll 3 threes, you get 3 points. King of New York took that aspect of the game as being too simplified and boring and tried to add a whole building like destruction aspect to the game. What they did was they made the game just complicated enough that you're not likely to bust it out, and just complicated enough that if you're going to learn something like that, you're going to take a game that's more interesting than King of Tokyo, unless you really like King of Tokyo. So King of New York is like that guy that's, you know, it's like the football player that's too fat to be a fullback, but not tall enough to be an offensive lineman. Random side complaint. Hollywood never understands that offensive linemen need to be tall. It's the opposite of a sweet spot. It's like it's that sore spot, the sour spot. It's the opposite of a sweet spot. So I don't really like King of New York, although if you buy it, you can just throw it with the main game and you got all the different characters to choose from. Although that's a lot to fit in one box, so I still need to keep like both boxes there. I haven't really played that much with the power-up expansion, but I think that's a good addition to the game. King of Tokyo Origins I recently played. That's the board game contraction, the anti-expansion for King of Tokyo, so you basically don't have any cards that require tokens in the game. Mainly it's just more standees that you can use. I'm looking forward to trying King of Monster Island at some point. I don't own it. King of Tokyo, great game, number 23 of all time. Number 22, Sushi Go Party. And Sushi Go. Sushi Go is the easiest drafting game to get to the table. Everyone is drafting sushi cards, and the different sushi give you different amounts of points, and you're trying to maximize your set collection through drafting cards. It's got cute little sushi drawings, similar to Seven Wonders, because you're drafting cards, but it's a much simpler system, and it's easier to get played. Sushi Go Party, which arguably is what the game should have been in the first place, gives you a lot more cards to choose from, so you're not playing with the same, you know, like 8 types of sushi from the beginning. And I really like Sushi Go Party. It's a great game, especially if you feel someone hasn't played a drafting game and you want to just show them what it's like. But it's a fun game in itself. It has a solid app, actually. I don't have Sushi Roll very high on the list because, you know, I mean, like, it didn't need a dice game, I guess. If there's a drafting game that competes with Sushi Go, it's actually probably Draftosaurus, but Draftosaurus didn't make my top 50. It just missed, actually. But that one can be a little bit tough because you're drafting little meeples and you can feel what they are when you're picking them out. It's a little bit of a different thing. But Sushi Go, it's a staple. Everyone should have Sushi Go in their collection if they consider themselves a board game enthusiast. Sushi Go for me is number 22 all time. And number 21, Small World. Small World's an area control game where instead of having generic little dudes on a map, you have different races. These races are like elves, dwarves, more than just skeletons, sorcerers, Amazons. It's an interesting mix even in just the base game. There's not a lot to the combat. You basically enter the board and with a stack of your guys. And every time you take over land, you got to use your guys to take up the territories. There's a little bit of chance you can push it often for like 1 extra territory at the end of each turn. But really what the game works is when people attack you, you lose your tokens, so you lose your population of your race. So for each race you get a good like 1 or 2 round prime. Really the 2 rounds, that's tends to be the sweet spot for a lot of races. 3rd round, if you're really stretching it. 4th round, if you go 4 rounds with 1 race, you're either doing a really good job or you keep forgetting to, or you're like you need to just bite the bullet and switch races, because what you do is your race, then you set them to go into decline, you basically lose a turn, and then the next turn you come in with your new race. It's a fun game, especially if you like the area control aspect. When you pick a new race, you get a combination between races with special twists on their abilities, so that decision is very fun. So every game is a little bit different that way. Small World's one of those games where I introduced it to a bunch of people, and then someone came back the next day at work and said, like, I really want to play Small World again. And whenever that happens too, the game comes up higher on my list, because that's kind of the whole point of the thing, right? Is you want to have fun with other people. It's not just that I enjoy it, you know, just playing myself, like I'm really having fun here, although that does matter. You also want to make sure the game is fun for other people. I've had a lot of success with Small World being fun for a lot of people. Small World is number 21. To be fair, also, I haven't played Small World Underground yet, but I would like to. I have some of the mini expansions for Small World, though, and I have, like, River World, for example. So I played some of the expansions. Number 20 is Warhammer 40,000. So, to be clear, my list isn't necessarily just board games. It also includes tabletop games. But I got a lot to say about this entry. I'm going to spend more time on this entry than any other game on the list. For the uninitiated, Warhammer 40,000 is a tabletop miniatures game that is so big that if you really get into it, it will take up more space in your house than a card game like Love Letter would take up in a house in the terrain build for a game of Warhammer 40,000. This scale, it's really tough to kind of compare these games. But I have drawn the line around Warhammer 40,000 in a way that's fair to treat it as a game. To be clear, Warhammer 40,000 isn't really just a game, it's also a hobby. You also have video games, you have all the books. I'm obviously not going to consider like the books for Warhammer 40,000 be part of this entry on the list. What I'm considering to be part of Warhammer 40,000 is playing the game, building armies with the intent of playing the game, and also to a certain extent painting and assembling those armies, especially when it comes down to doing anything to say like pick weapon options that are legal. I started playing Warhammer 40,000 at the end of 2021 with a handful of friends, one of which is Fynl, who you should subscribe to on Instagram and YouTube. Since then, I have probably spent more time painting miniatures for Warhammer than I have playing all other games put together. There are a few reasons for this. One of which is actually the fact that my phase of life has not been one where I play as many games as usual. Another aspect is that is actually a really enjoyable hobby. Doing it in service of building a Warhammer army makes it extra fun. I actually don't think I would get into miniature painting if it weren't for building armies. I don't know what it is. Even if I only play the game like once every couple of years, I would still be interested in painting, knowing that I could use it. And I'd be much less likely to paint a unit, just say like, I just thought it looked cool. Miniature painting for me has become like a solo game. I don't play a lot of solo games. I don't even necessarily play as many video games as I used to. Miniature painting has kind of taken that up for me because I like doing that and then being able to look at what I've made.
Before you die, let me show you the things I have done, so you understand the breadth of my transformation. Do you see? Do you see?
Yes, I see.
As far as the actual game though of Warhammer 40,000, I'm not in love with it. It takes several hours to play a game of Warhammer 40,000. The reason why, when you have a bunch of miniatures that you paint and you spend potentially multiple hours on single units, you don't want to just give them 3 numbers and a sentence of rules for it. You need to justify the investment in these pieces. As a result, the Warhammer 40,000 game has a ton of rules. And this is where you'll see people with books open for most of the game, as opposed to, say, having an entire game that's on cards or just in a rule book, which is good and bad. If you really learn everything, it can be very fulfilling to play the game. But again, the game could take hours, days even. And to be honest, the rules aren't especially streamlined either. Like, there are a lot of instances in Warhammer 40,000. Let me think of a good example. This is a mission card. Let me read this to you. In the second, third, and fourth battle rounds, at the end of each command phase, the player whose turn it is scores 5 VP, victory points, for each objective marker they control. 1-5, no. Up to 15, what is 1-5? Up to 15 VP per turn. In the fifth battle round, the player who has the first turn scores VP as described above, and the player who has the second turn scores VP as described above, but does so at the end of their turn instead of at the end of the command phase. You have to kind of like read that like 3 times. You don't even have to mention that it's as described above. Just say that at the fifth battle round, the second player is their command phase. You don't have to repeat the point that the first turn is it's just like unnecessarily verbose way of doing the rules. Whenever I played 40K, there'll be times in the rules where it's not obvious because of the language used, whether or not something's supposed to happen, say, once or every time. So they'll use the term each. In fact, I don't even think the word every is in the rule book. I distinctly remember playing, I was like going to the rule book thinking like, it's not obvious if this effect is supposed to happen just the first time every round or multiple times in a round or just once in the whole game and then you discard the card. If there were less rules in the game, I could find the example, but I can't find it right now. Overly verbose rules, add that on top of the fact that every army is basically its own game, its own complex game in Warhammer 40K. And yeah, it's a lot to play. But this still doesn't take away from the fact that I spent, again, more time army building for 40K than doing just about anything over the past 3 years. That's saying something. Because that's how I've set this, to say like, whatever counts as going in the effort of building armies and ultimately playing the game counts as the game. That's why you'll see Warhammer 40,000 on this list. I haven't mentioned a collectible card game on this list so far. Will I for the rest of the countdown?
I'll leave that for you to discover on your own.
Even though I like shiny cardboard as much as the next guy, I don't think chasing rare cards counts as part of a trading card game unless you're trying to use that rare card to play in a game. If you're just doing it for collection reasons, I don't count that. Am I just being overly complicated to rationalize what I've included thus far?
I'll leave that for you to discover on your own.
Let's keep going. Number 19. The Resistance Avalon, and also the Resistance. Resistance Avalon, or just known as Avalon. I'm pretty sure the Resistance Avalon gets played like 10 times as much as the Resistance. It's a social deduction game which I don't even know that social deduction was a prominent area of board gaming until Avalon came along. You had games like One Night Ultimate Werewolf. You had the game Werewolf itself, which everyone kind of saw as just a party game. But once Avalon came out, they realized, like, wow, there's a lot you can do with the social deduction style mechanic. Social deduction being not sure who around the table is, say, good guys or bad guys. The way Avalon works, you have a King Arthur theme, and you take turns choosing people to go on quests with you. Everyone's assignment, whether or not they're good guys or bad guys, is secret. And the good guys are trying to make sure that the good guys go on quests. The bad guys are trying to go on quests because then once everyone goes on the quest, a bad guy can secretly sabotage the quest. So it's a matter of figuring out who's good and bad. So there's a lot of bluffing. People will have secret roles. Often in these games, in like the fast versions of the game, like in Avalon, you might play with 1 or 2 people with a secret role, and other people just with like plain roles of just generic good guy or generic bad guy. Earlier on the list, I mentioned Blood in the Clock Tower. That one, everyone has a role, and it takes like a bit of time to play, and it can get complicated, all the different interactions that are going on. But it's not to get to a point of a complex game. It's just complicated for a social deduction game. A game like Avalon is more stripped down, but as a result, you can play it a lot. And social deduction by itself is a great mechanic. It's a lot of fun. I will never get rid of Avalon. And actually, the first time I played Avalon was one of the most fun I've had playing a game. It was at a bachelor party. My friends busted it out. I was like, how have I not played this before? This was a while ago, though. It's another one of those games that has kind of become its own mechanic. I actually mentioned this before about Dominion, how it's kind of its own just mechanic now. And then I was just watching the Dice Tower Top 100 board games of all time for 2025, and they actually talked about this a lot, so I'm not going to go into it too much, but I do think Resistance Avalon is another game that became its own mechanic. Although, to be fair, I guess you kind of had Shadows over Camelot, which was using aspects of this, and this is kind of like a skinny down version of Shadows over Camelot. But anyway, it's the number 19 game of all time. Number 18, Unlock and Unlock Kids. Speaking of new categories of games that have cropped up over the last, 5 to 10 years or so, Unlock is my favorite escape room style series of games. To be clear, with Unlock, I'm talking about all the Unlock games and Unlock Kids. Unlock simulates the experience of being in an escape room, which is where you get, say, locked into a room and there's a series of puzzles you need to solve to break out. The way Unlock does this is with cards. The basic mechanic is like this. You might have a lock that's a red 5, and then you'll have 3 keys, and one of them is like a blue 12, one's a blue 15, and one's like a gray 20. Blue and red, you work together. If you want to see if the key works, you add those numbers together, and then you flip over that card number in the deck. All the cards, again, are numbered. Some of them have letters, but it's beside the point. So you add 5 to 12, and then you flipped over 17. And if card 17, it might say that you opened the lock, or it might say that you failed. And you do this until you complete the quest. Sometimes you'll have little hidden numbers on the cards. I don't necessarily love all the hidden number things, but it's a nice little tweak on the game. All the missions in Unlock range in quality. You got some that are a little bit frustrating because maybe they're getting a little bit too cute with some of the mechanisms, and some of them are excellent. They're fun the whole time. You can play them yourself in theory, but you could also, I have always played 2 or more players. It actually does get easier when you have more players, just like when you play with an escape room, because people coming at it from different angles, because everyone's brain works a little bit differently, can be very useful. In the US, at least, they used to sell them as individual missions, but now you generally buy them as 3-packs. The best part about it, in my opinion, is the fact that you can reset it by just taking the cards, putting them back together, and then you give them to someone else. This is why I like them more than, for example, the Exit series of games, where you are not supposed to kind of put them back together, but I always kind of try to put them back together to get more use out of it. So when I'm trying to play Exit, I'm like, do we really need to rip this? Let's just pretend we ripped it. Doesn't make it as fun to play. But I've been able to do that. I've been able to complete Exit games without actually destroying anything. But it's not really an endorsement of the game. I like the Unlock system. And I also like the Unlock Kids system. The Unlock Kids system is a little bit different than Unlock because instead of using the, say, addition mechanic, you have tokens, like punch out cardboard tokens, and then you'll have patterns that get matched. So you'll line things up, like if you want to put a key on a door, you'll have a picture of a door, and then you have a little cardboard token, and then you put it, and then you look up the image it makes. So it's like a 2-piece image, and you go look up the shape in your guidebook, which I actually like better. The Unlock Kids games are obviously a lot easier than the regular Unlock games, especially easier than some of them. My wife's calling. Hey, what's up?
Hey, I was in such a rush. Totally forgot to grab the post office bag from your car. Are you able to do it or no?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, because like I said, I got distracted by the littlest one here completely face planting. I'll have to reenact it for you. It was funny because he was fine. But that's why I tell everyone, careful getting in the car, it's slippery. All right, Anyway, all right, bye.
All right, bye. So if you want to play a game with kids who have a tendency to face plant into the car, maybe you want to go with Unlock Kids, which is a little bit easier for them. That's why the Unlock combination is number 18 on my all-time list. Number 17, Gloomhaven. Now, this is interesting. You see, I've never played the Gloomhaven digital adaptation. I've also never touched physically the game of Gloomhaven, but I've played it like a dozen times. And I also have Frosthaven here. We're gonna do this soon. Oh man, yeah, it's making my bookshelves bow. Yeah, no, I'm really excited to play this at some point, but the time will come. But the way I played Gloomhaven was actually with the guy you should subscribe to, Fynl, and a couple other friends. This is before we got into Warhammer. Early on during the pandemic, we basically streamed to each other, just played 4-player games of Gloomhaven. And it worked. Thanks a lot to Fynl's setup, even without being able to physically touch the game. I don't know, maybe I'm weird that way, where I prefer to do that than a video game. Seems strange. A lot of people have given up on Gloomhaven and gone to the digital adaptations of the game. But Gloomhaven is amazing to me because, one, it's an awesome campaign that builds out over time. I love the idea that you choose characters and you retire them. The game works where every mission ends up being close, and almost when you'll find times throughout the mission you'll say like, there's no way we're going to do this. But every time I've played it, I think we've been successful all but like maybe one of the times we've gone on a mission. You know, maybe that wouldn't continue if we played through like the 50 hours of Gloomhaven, but we always seem to pull it out in the end. And it doesn't seem like something that's forced, that it's made to be easy. It just so works out that we were able to pull it off. Kind of like War of the Ring in a way. It's like, I'm amazed by how well it works. So I'm excited to get Gloomhaven back to the table at some point. I have not played Jaws of the Lion yet, but when I do, I anticipate that there's no reason why I'm not going to just throw that in to consider it be part of Gloomhaven because of the way I'm lumping games together on this list. Jaws of the Lion is another game that I'm looking forward to breaking out, kind of like a fine wine. Gloomhaven is number 17. Number 16, board game enthusiasts, cover your ears. I'm about to drop the C word. Number 16 is Catan. Yeah, that's right. If you're confused as to why Catan could possibly be on a list like this, one spot ahead of Gloomhaven. I mentioned this in the first video. My list is the top games of all time, meaning I don't need to have necessarily played them or really want to play them at this moment for it to be behind my list. I give credit to games that I really enjoyed in the past for periods of time. Just like we would give credit to Michael Jordan being good in the 80s and 90s when you're ranking best basketball players of all time. The fact that Michael Jordan could make Team USA now doesn't hurt his case for being the best basketball player of all time. The fact that played Catan a ton, especially in the late 2000s until about like 2010, 2011 or so. The fact that it was the kickoff game for a work game night that I had going because everyone, knows what Catan is and a lot of people came out for that. The fact that I have some relatives that aren't really into board games, but they're into Catan and we can play it with them. It's true of like a lot of other friends too. Like there's a reason why Catan is popular. It's a simple enough game that people can grasp it. The trading aspect of the game is something unique and can lead to a lot of fun moments amongst friends. And it's significantly more fun than games that people might be used to, like Monopoly. Now, because the game is so popular, it gets an outsized amount of criticism. People can get frustrated with the game. You'll have people that won't realize that the player that they thought was winning in the game and they're not trading with isn't really winning anymore, and people might feel a little bit left out. And a lot of people don't like the dice rolling, especially if you have like a good setup and your numbers never get rolled. The fact that I don't even feel the need to explain how Catan works at all is a vote in favor of the game. It's a classic. I don't like the fact that they're making another edition again. Apparently they're going to make another, printing of the game where they're going to restart it again and all the expansions. You have to buy new ones to get them all to match again. I don't necessarily love that, so I'm probably not going to buy any more Catan stuff. My preferred way to play Catan, and I played this a lot with the friends I grew up with when we were going through a run where we played Catan quite a bit, would be Cities and Knights with some aspects of Traders and Barbarians, for example, like Harbor Master. We wouldn't play with Seafarers. We wouldn't play with things like the Camels. But really, like Cities and Knights, that was the best expansion, in my opinion. Made it so that you could develop your cities a little bit more, added some more resources to it. That was my favorite way to play, and we all agreed, actually, in the game, that was our preferred way to play. Seafarers would kind of just make the game a little bit longer. I played a 2-player variants with my wife a decent amount. It's a game we played enough that I'm comfortable house ruling some aspects of the game and getting it to work. Like, I'm pretty comfortable not taking the maps that, are pre-designed in the rule book. I know how to make one that's just not stupid, and then the game will work. I'm always happy to play Catan with someone who's excited to play Catan or has never played Catan. So that's why it's number 16 of all time for me. Even if it's not necessarily the game that I would say, I was like, I've been dying to play this over the last 6 months.
The C word.
You're not getting a vote. Get rid of the C word.
I'll leave when I'm good and ready.
Number 15, Ticket to Ride, and Ticket to Ride Europe, and a bunch of other Ticket to Rides all the expansions, and the miniature versions. I kind of consider this all to be the same game. It's really just Ticket to Ride with different maps. You have Ticket to Ride, which is basically Ticket to Ride USA. You have Ticket to Ride Europe, which is basically just another starter box with another map and some tweaks to it. You have Ticket to Ride Nordic countries, which is limited to 3 players, but is again just another map. You have, I guess Ticket to Ride Germany is like that too. Then all the expansions you get for Ticket to Ride, it's really just different maps. The core system of Ticket to Ride is great. If there's any game that has surpassed Catan at being a gateway game to modern board gaming, it's probably Ticket to Ride. The app is great. I don't think the app's being developed anymore, but it's one of the best board game apps ever. You really feel like you can play Ticket to Ride and also try out all the different maps if you buy them. The miniaturized Ticket to Ride, I consider those to be anti-expansions, so I lump them in with expansions to say it is just a different version of Ticket to Ride. The miniaturized Ticket to Ride that I have is Ticket to Ride Amsterdam. I don't really feel compelled to get Ticket to Ride New York or London or San Francisco or any of those. It would be as if you play with, like, say, half the map of Ticket to Ride USA or something like that. But Ticket to Ride's great. It's a simple system where you, every turn, you either take cards, use cards to put trains down, or take route cards, tickets. It's dumb that they're called tickets. Route cards, which are ways that you get points. I would say Ticket to Ride is almost as popular, almost as well known as Catan, a little bit more mechanically sound. I enjoy it a little bit more. That's why Ticket to Ride has just nudged out Catan and is my number 15 game of all time. Number 14. Cosmic Encounter. I wish it were as ubiquitous and popular as Ticket to Ride and Catan, because I don't see any reason why it couldn't be. Cosmic Encounter is a multiplayer game of conflict and negotiating. The basic mechanic of this game is the card game War, where 2 players will play a card and the larger number wins. It's kind of a simple starting point of the game. It's a very learnable game. I think it's at best with at least 5 players. It's good with 5 or 6. It doesn't really work as well with 4 or 3, but everyone is an alien race and you have 5 planets with each that start off with ships. And the deck says which pairs have encounters each round. By winning encounters, your ships can go colonize enemy planets, your other friends' planets. And your ships also can add to your cards, so it adds into the war mechanic. But here's where the game shine. 1, not all the alien races have equivalently powerful powers, which seems like a problem at first. For example, you have the Macrons, which have, each ship is worth 4. That's a lot better than some, like, I think, was it the Spaceman Spiff faction, where you can, like, crash land one spaceship on an enemy world, like, even in defeat. Some are more powerful than others. But the game is self-balancing, because before you actually have a conflict with someone, you can invite people around the table to join your side, inviting allies. And allies can pick and choose who they join, if anyone. The players will self-correct for the stronger factions and for who's winning. So really, who wins the game is whoever can appear to be the least of a threat. It is so much fun. It's one of the things, I have all the expansions for Cosmic Encounter, including Cosmic Encounter Odyssey. And a lot of those I haven't gotten to break out yet. There are little tweaks you can make, but the core system is great. There are also so many aliens to choose from. No 2 games are realistically going to be the same. I think it might be the most impressive game design that I've ever seen. The reason why it's only number 14 is really only limited by how much I've really played it, because it is a little bit tough to get to the table. And if you're honest, it doesn't always land. Sometimes if someone's overly shy, like you're playing with, acquaintances, someone might not feel as good being like, no, we got to team up on that guy. Cosmic Encounter to me is like the natural progression of Catan. Once you have a group that plays Catan a lot, and you want something more interesting, go to Cosmic Encounter and blow their minds. Cosmic Encounter is number 14. Number 13, Monikers. Monikers is arguably the greatest party game ever designed. It's based on the old game Celebrities, which a lot of the best games are. They're based on games that lasted for decades without the need of a box to go buy it to go play. In Celebrities, where a bunch of people write down the names of celebrities and put it in a hat, you have a deck of cards. That's a bunch of different people. You might have some celebrities out there, but you also have other things. I can actually look at it.
We'll do it live. Okay. We'll do it live!
This is in the Monikers copy. So this is why you would buy this instead of just play Celebrities. You have Sinead O'Connor, Anne Frank, Dick Cheney's Pacemaker, Joey Chestnut, Marie Antoinette, the Gerber Baby, Lance Armstrong. I don't know who Vidal Sassoon is. Oh, a TED presenter. So you got a bunch of these. You don't even need to play this game in teams. So the way it works, you deal out like 8 cards to everyone who's playing a game. Everyone picks their favorite 4, you put them in a deck. It actually says you should do 10 cards and everyone picks 5. Same idea. You give the full deck, shuffle it up, give it to one person. And they have a time limit where they're trying to get people to guess the cards as quickly as possible by describing them however they want. And the only rule is they can't say what the card is. So they can't literally say the name, which is actually a pretty fun mechanic by itself. I actually used to really like this game. Before I played Monikers, I would have had the game catchphrase up here because that's kind of just what you're doing. After you go through the deck of cards, you finish round 1. Now it gets harder. Round 2, instead of saying whatever you want to try and get people to guess the card, you have 1-word clues. And this works because everyone has heard each card at least once now. Round 3, you can act it out, but you can't talk. And you can keep going, and then you can have round 4. This is where you get to like different versions of it. Round 4, you'll have things like you can act it out, but you have to sit behind a couch. You only act out with your head. Or round 4, people will just make like a sound. You keep going to round 5 too. People do like act things out under a bed sheet. Like, it can get kind of bizarre. It works every time, and it can be hilarious what people come up with. And the fact that people do these silly things and you still get it. People are still able to guess what it is. But again, one of the best party games ever made. Monikers is number 13. Number 12. Sheriff of Nottingham. I played the first edition of Sheriff of Nottingham. Sheriff of Nottingham is a bluffing game. Apparently there are other versions that were out before. You know, it was called Sheriff of Nottingham. There's a second edition now. But the core idea is this. Everyone takes turns being the sheriff. And other people are trying to sneak goods past the sheriff. So they have cards. And some of these cards will be some things like apples, which are okay. And they'll have like crossbows, which are not okay. What you do is you put these cards in this nice little felt pouch and you give it to the sheriff. And you tell the sheriff what's in it, and you'll say like, oh, 5 apples. The sheriff decides then whether or not to open the bag. If the sheriff opens the bag and what's in it is what you told the sheriff, then the sheriff has to pay you an inconvenience fee. But if the sheriff opens the bag and you were lying and it was actually crossbows, you said it was apples, you have to pay the price for that. So it's about bluffing, because you want it. Crossbows are worth a lot more than apples. So you want to say 5 apples when you really have 5 crossbows. I think you're even allowed to say like, this is 5 crossbows. Imagine like a TSA agent. Someone walks up and said like, sir, what's in this bag? Crossbows. Oh, that wasn't in the book. I don't know what to do now. So you can't do that. It's a very pure bluffing game. And the expansions add little things to it. Now, whether or not the game is like perfectly balanced is questionable. It's more questionable than Cosmic Encounter because it's not self-balancing. You can say that the best way to do it is just to always tell the truth and you can score a lot of points. That's partially why the expansions are like, I have the Merry Men expansion, for example, for the first edition of the game, where you can make a lot of contraband a lot more valuable. You don't realize that the first few times you're playing the game. And this game is really designed, it's not necessarily meant for people that play the same game 20 times. It's meant for something like a little bit lighter game to play with people just to have fun. Kind of to show them too, like, let's have a fun time tonight. They don't need to necessarily learn all the rules of Gloomhaven. It's a nice, faster game. But man, it's such a great bluffing game too. Plus, people can be so funny when they're trying to bluff. And that's why Sheriff of Nottingham is number 12. And number 11, Flamme Rouge. Flamme Rouge is my favorite racing game ever. And I like racing games. Now, to be clear, I have not played Heat yet, which is by the same designer, and everyone says it's better. And that's why I haven't played it yet. Because talk about like wanting to open a fine wine. I do not want that to be a disappointment. I don't want to get interrupted by a kid face planting in the middle of the game when I'm playing it. I want to be set aside. Like, I want to make sure the people that are playing the game want to play the game. I am really excited to play Heat. I think I'm going to like it. But this entry isn't about Heat. This is about Flamme Rouge. Flamme Rouge is a bike racing game. So think like the Lance Armstrong style bikes. Although aesthetically, it's a little bit older, not like, you know, the modern just doping bikers. But that's not beside the point. Everyone has 2 bikes. They're trying to get around a track. And there are spaces on the track. And you have cards you play every turn that represent basically how hard you pedal. So you get some cards that are 5, so you pedal 5 spaces, and some that are 7, so you pedal 7 spaces. You got 2 bikers, and they each have slightly different decks of cards. One is a sprinter, one is more of an endurance guy. And you can use them together. But here's how you use them together. The game has 2 mechanics that make this interesting. One, you have drafting mechanics. If you are right behind another bike and you have a space between you, you get sucked up behind them, so you get a free space. And if you have the opposite, if you have no one in front of you, then you have to take cards that are really bad. They're like exhaustion cards, where it's a deck building game. So you go into your discard pile, and when you go to get new cards later in the race, you might be stuck with exhaustion cards that only pedal 2 spots. So that's bad. So the game works out like this, like any of the best racing games. It's a matter of, you can't just go. I mean, I guess you could. Okay. And it's like, you could try to be like the rabbit, and you probably will not be successful. Maybe sometimes you can be. What you have to do is paying close attention to your opponents and time up when you decide to go. You go too early, you're going to run out of, someone's going to pass you at the last minute. If you go too late, you're going to run out of time. You might plan to go on a certain turn and then you just don't happen to get the cards you want because you weren't good with preserving your energy up to that point. Or maybe preserve your energy too much, and as now when it's time to go, you're too far behind. So it's a game like that. It's not, obviously you're not going to have a racing game where it's a matter of just like a sprint, like a real life sprint where you're trying to, train well to race. That's not really how it works. You're always deciding how much to push it. Plus the expansions are nice. The expansions, you have great AI bikes on the Peloton expansion, and then you add weather where you have like potentially like say even slippery turns in the Mateo. What is it? The weather expansion? Yeah. It's a game where if this existed when I was playing risk games by myself at age 10, I had non-gamer siblings. If I had Flamme Rouge then, I would be so happy just playing Flamme Rouge against the AI bikes myself. I would do that all the time. Really. Like one of my biggest hobbies as a kid was creating imaginary sports leagues in spreadsheets and doing like coin flipping to see how many goals a hockey team scores. Like I would just do that stuff. And I can just do that. If I could spend all day just doing things like that.
Hello, darkness.
Flamme Rouge is number 11 all time.
I've played games you people wouldn't believe. I've seen attack ships on fire and Master of Orion. Jenga blocks glittering on a Tannhauser box. All these moments will be lost like tokens in vacuums. Time. The top 10 games of all time according to Jackson Warfield.
It's time for the top 10 board games according to Jackson Warfield. My name happens to be Jackson the Warfield, so I'm going to deliver this list to you. We've gone through 40 of the top 50 so far. If you'd like to start from the beginning, check the link on screen. We're going to pick up right where we left off. My number 10 game is a bluffing game. We're going to make a riddle out of all these. My number 10 board game of all time is Skull. Skull is a bluffing game, and it is my favorite pure bluffing game. Skull, if you haven't played it, is similar in feel to games like poker and liar's dice. The way Skull works is pretty simple. You and up to 5 other players, so it's a 6-player game, go around a table basically making bets where you can flip over a certain number of cards without flipping over a skull.
Why skulls then?
The cards, when you buy this game, they're nice coasters. The production value is pretty high, which it kind of has to be to justify its cost, because this is a game you actually, in theory, could play with a deck of cards, and I've played that with a deck of cards. In fact, one of my favorite times ever playing Skull was playing with a deck of cards at an airport. Well, actually not technically an airport, technically waiting to go to the airport, but then again at the airport. I mentioned before how much I enjoy it when people who I've introduced to the game then go off and buy it themselves right after. Skull is one of the games where that has happened. Not only that, Skull is the only game where I have introduced someone to it, they've bought the game, busted it out somewhere else, and then someone else they introduced to it then bought the game themselves. So it's like an explosion of Skull, which sounds worse than it is.
Are we the baddies?
Sheriff of Nottingham was in the last video. Sheriff of Nottingham is also a bluffing game, but Skull and the Sheriff of Nottingham give very different feels. Sheriff of Nottingham is more like get through TSA, the game. Run! Whereas Skull is more like a game that makes you feel like you're, gambling underground in Vietnam. Skull is great. And I keep calling it Skull. My copy isn't called Skulls and Roses, even though that makes it seem a little bit, nicer. One of my favorite moments in the game is where I made bids that I could flip over a bunch of roses. And when I flip over mine, because you have to flip over yours first in Skull, I had a skull there. And I was so focused on bluffing that I forgot that I was bluffing. That's a good game when things like that happen. So Skull is number 10. Number 9. This is the newest game on the list. The Lord of the Rings, Duel for Middle-earth. I'll clarify here. My list of top 50 games ever is a list of the best games of all time, with credit being given to a game if it's good for a while, if I enjoy it for years. That's why Catan was on the list. Catan isn't one of my top 50 games if I had to play right now. But I played Catan so much that it's like the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar of board games in a way for me. The Lord of the Rings Duel for Middle-earth is as if I'm putting, I guess to take a basketball analogy further, Victor Wembanyama, Wemby, and put it on the list. Some young player, which is saying something because to reach the top games of all time, and I've only played it a handful of times, single-digit plays of this game, shows how good of a game it is. So Lord of the Rings Duel for Middle-earth, a re-implementation of a lot of the mechanisms you'll see in Seven Wonders Duel, which is one of the OG two-player games. Wink. Not only is the gameplay streamlined and enhanced in certain ways, but it incorporates the Lord of the Rings theme, which is my favorite universe, especially favorite fantasy universe for gaming. And honestly, there's, apparently for everyone else because of all the new Lord of the Rings games that are coming out lately. So Lord of the Rings Duel for Middle-earth, again, it's a two-player game where you are grabbing cards off a ziggurat and dueling with your opponent to get all the right cards to build towards one of three victory conditions. Yeah, the good guys and the bad guys. And like with a lot of the Lord of the Rings games, the good guys are either trying to destroy the ring or win the war that's going on. And the bad guys are trying to either prevent the destruction of the ring and try to destroy the ring bearer or ring bearers, or win the battle. So you're going back and forth, but you're doing this within a system that's like Seven Wonders Duel. It's amazing how well it works. It actually takes any aspects in Seven Wonders Duel where you thought you were just like, oh, I'm playing a game or this mechanic's a little tough to remember, and fits it into the theme so well that you don't seem to have any trouble remembering it before. It's great. Easily my new favorite two-player game. And there's no saying how high this game could go. If you get enough plays in, it could easily be one of the top, if not the top game on my list at some point in the future. I just started playing it. Number 9 of all time. On a related note, number 8 all time. Seven Wonders Duel. I just said that the Lord of the Rings Duel for Middle-earth is based on Seven Wonders Duel and improves on the gameplay in a lot of ways, which it does. But here's the point of my list. Seven Wonders Duel is probably my most played duel game with my wife. In fact, it was one of the games that helped get me really into the board gaming hobby. In fact, if I open the score sheet, can I do that? Of course I can do that. It's my own video. Where is it? All right, I got all the expansions in the box here. First played on 4/2/2017. I lost because my wife always wins the first time we play a new game. I would feel worse about, except she definitely suffers from analysis paralysis on the first place. I like both of the expansions for Seven Wonders Duel as well. Both the Agora and Pantheon expansions. I prefer Agora a little bit. Well, that one is newer, so I haven't played with it as much. This is just a way to shake up the game's core mechanisms. I think Seven Wonders Duel is a better implementation of Seven Wonders. And it's, trust me, much better than playing Seven Wonders with the two-player variant. I was always a little bit miffed that Shut Up and Sit Down, which is one of my favorite review channels, gave the game a less than glowing review because say that the whole
ziggurat thing is like the most interesting thing about Seven Wonders Duel. But also it's not that interesting.
It really makes me wonder how they were even playing the game. Many dueling games can get too intense. For example, I could say like Onitama can get a little bit too thinky abstract for some people. I can understand how Lost Cities as a dueling game can get a little bit too intense and too stressful sometimes. Seven Wonders Duel has enough things going on where I think you get that duel feel, but it's not so much like a knife fight in a phone booth that can put people off from games. It's a two-player game, so it doesn't have the feel of a Seven Wonders 7-player game. That doesn't mean it's not better in basically every other way. Seven Wonders Duel is great, and I'm not taking it off my list and just replacing it with Seven Wonders. I keep saying Seven Wonders Duel for Middle-earth with the Lord of the Rings Duel for Middle-earth, which could be just Seven Wonders the Lord of the Rings Duel for Middle-earth, but that would be a kind of bad title. Too much branding at once. And for this year, it's still above it. It's got that long history behind it. It's my number 8 game of all time. Number 7, Balderdash. Balderdash is my top party game of all time. Mild spoilers here. Back when I was in high school, I used to keep a game of Balderdash in my trunk, just in case. I know, right? About what other like high school kids used to keep in their trunk just in case. Yeah, no, I wasn't keeping that stuff in my trunk. I was keeping this copy here. This is, you see, it's well worn. In fact, I kind of regret, I got a used copy of Beyond Balderdash that had a little bit of that mildew smell, and I put that in my original box, which I'm not totally thrilled I did that, but I got, some of the desk impacts I had saved, kept them in there. Yeah, that's fine. It smells a little bit like when you bust out the game at Grandma's house. Some of you might have noticed that Balderdash is actually a bluffing game, and I had it above my favorite bluffing game of all time, which is Skull. And the reason why is I don't really think of Balderdash as so much of a bluffing game as a lying game. It's a party game because you're supposed to just come up with stuff. It's funny, Balderdash works better when you're not trying too hard. So the way Balderdash works is it has a list of ridiculous things, say like ridiculous laws that exist somewhere. And someone will read out the first half of the law, say it's illegal in Florida to ride a bike while X. And what everyone else will do is write a fake ending to that law, and then the person who's reading out reads the actual ending. And people will vote on what they think the real law is. And the real law is getting pretty ridiculous, so you're incentivized to be a little bit silly. Now, there are some ways that the game can kind of break. One is if people just take way too long coming up with things. They're like, I can't think of anything. If you just get someone like that to break through and just say, like, it doesn't matter. Just like say it's illegal to ride a bike while eating insulation from your basement. Like, that's probably a good answer, to be honest. The other way it can break is that if people think it's too funny to be like, oh, look at me, I'm a dumbass, or something like that. So the person reading it out says that. Like, some people think that's funnier than the game. It's not. Don't do that. Balderdash is great. Again, there's a reason why I still have that same copy. I had no plan to get rid of it, and I'm going to try to do what I can to get that scent changed. Balderdash is my number 7 game of all time, easily within the top 10. Number 6, Twilight Imperium. And to be clear, I've played the 4th edition of the game. I actually haven't played the expansion yet, but I have the box, and I have the stuff, and I'm ready to go. Twilight Imperium is my number 1 epic game experience. Plays up to 6, although I think it goes up to 8 with the expansion. It's a 6+ hour game. You play out a space opera with your friends. Hopefully friends, doesn't have to be friends, where you are all vying for control of a galaxy, but not just through combat, also through commerce and through politics. There is a phase in the game where at the end of rounds, you vote on which laws to enact within the game. I think that one aspect of the game sells it more than anything else. Yeah, you got these little spaceships that are cool, but of course at 8 hours, you're voting on laws. Everyone has their different races and their different special powers, which are actually very well done. The game is high quality. This is a game where actually I split with some friends. I'm the keeper of the copy. And in there, we also have the things where you have like little clear plexiglass tables where you can have more ships on a hex and you can still see things a little bit better. In theory, you could play the game in all different ways and play almost 3-dimensionally, I think. I don't know if I want to do that. It's tough to play because of how long it takes. But if you ask me to say, I could have any one game I could play a session of in a day. That's probably it. And that's over, say, actually getting to finish a game of Warhammer 40,000. It's over the games ranked higher on the list even because of how epic it is when the game happens. I just can't quite put it any higher because we don't, it's not going to play it every week kind of a thing. I can't play a 2-player version of it. I'm looking forward to when my kids are old enough to play this game because then we get a 5-player game going. I'll be well into my 40s by that point. It'll hopefully offset how uncomfortable it is to be old.
Hello, darkness.
More back pain and probably reflux, who knows. Like, that's okay if I get to play more games of Twilight Imperium. The Twilight Imperium, number 6 all time. Now we're getting serious here. Number 5, Pandemic. And the Pandemic Hot Zone games, which are kind of like Pandemic just with some aspects removed. Believe it or not, the first time I played Pandemic, I didn't really like it that much. It was the first edition of the game, but that doesn't really matter. I didn't quite know what to do and how to help because Pandemic's a cooperative game and it's at its best when everyone's working together to make things happen. Everyone works together with their own special abilities to control disease outbreaks that are happening around the globe. It used to be, I would tell people this is my favorite game, and then also like the pandemic happened, the actual pandemic, which I feel like they're kind of going away from aspects of the pandemic system name too, like with the new Lord of the Rings game designed by Matt Leacock. That's coming out in a couple months. It's not released yet, recording this in March of 2025. But Pandemic was the OG cooperative game. It's a great game to play with people who are at similar skill levels as you in the game. And when I say it's great, I mean, it doesn't get much better. I played this game multiplayer, up to 5 and 6 players at a number of people's houses, at board game nights. I played a 2-player with my wife a lot, enough that we did one on our kind of baby moon vacation before, my wife was pregnant with her first kid. I remember we were trying to beat every expansion 2-player at the max difficulty. Over the course of this little vacation, my fingers were starting to feel it from having to shuffle those cards all the time. I probably should have just sleeved them, but I bought a shuffling machine to do that. I was literally giving myself like paper cuts over time from reshuffling the deck so much, which is, you don't even shuffle that much during the course of the game, which is, so that's telling you anything. Pandemic, I've played the app. I love to bust out, of the games that I like to just bust out the app version sometimes, Pandemic is high up on the list because it makes a great just mobile game as well. I'll say also, this includes Pandemic Iberia. In my opinion, I would call that just still Pandemic. It is including the Pandemic Hot Zone games. It does not include Pandemic Legacy. Number 4, Star Realms and Hero Realms. If Star Realms were only a 2-player game, I think I would still have it above Seven Wonders Duel, and I would be calling it my favorite two-player game ever. But it's not just the two-player game. It can be played with more than two, even though it's best with two. Star Realms is a deck-building game. So it takes the system, it takes like the Dominion system, and perfects it. Instead of just trying to accumulate victory points in a, kind of lazily themed pure deck building game, you have a still pretty pure deck building game where instead of 10 cards now in the market, you have a refreshing market, kind of like a Ticket to Ride type market. Instead of just getting points, you're attacking your opponent and getting their health down. Kind of, I think, like how I think you have some Magic the Gathering designers in the designing of Star Realms. The other person's health is like what you're trying to bring down, their authority. Hero Realms is almost the same thing, just some little tweaks on it, and obviously the fantasy retheme. If you like deck building at all, and you're content with that being the vast majority of the game, Star Realms is amazing. And honestly, I don't know that you can do that much of a better job with a deck building game without adding other stuff to it. Like say with Dune Imperium, where you add in a board game on top of a deck building game, or Clank, for example, where you're adding things. That deck building is just one of the mechanics. Where deck building is the chief mechanic of the game, I don't think you do much better than Star Realms. Similar to Pandemic, I don't consider Star Realms Rise of Empire as part of it. Partially because I haven't played it. I've played Star Realms, the base game. I played Colony Wars. I played Frontiers. Played with all the different asymmetric starting decks with, if you want asymmetry in the game and so a little bit of flavor, that's a great addition to the game. Same with Hero Realms. I haven't played the Hero Realms different starters, but I'm mostly 90% of the time I'm playing Star Realms and not Hero Realms. I have a lot of the expansions for it. I would like to play. I'm looking forward to playing some of the Hero Realms campaigns as well. But Star Realms is such a great game for just busting out. I have upgraded it to be in the Universal Storage box because see yourself as a bit of a collector like me. When you like a game enough, I wanted to get everything for it. I wasn't content just owning, like, say, only Colony Wars and playing the rest on the app. Great app, by the way. I should probably make a list of the top board game apps. I wanted to complete the collection. Like here, Star Realms has been enough of a positive influence on my gaming life. I wanted to have it. I have it. It's great. It's all sleeved. There's a reason for it. Star Realms is number 4 all time. And actually, if I had done this list a year ago, I probably would have had it below Pandemic, but it's past Pandemic since then, which is, again, saying something. Number 3. Now, if you've been watching my channel, you have probably an idea of what we're looking at for these top 3 games here. But number 3 is HeroScape. HeroScape, I've been playing dating back to 2006. I was first introduced to HeroScape by a couple of my friends from high school when I was visiting them at college. They said, it's like, hey, we got something we got to show you. And they brought me into their dorm room, shut the door, locked the door, put a sock on the door, and busted out what they had gotten brought home from Gamer's Realm, which was HeroScape. Apparently they chose to buy HeroScape over Betrayal at House on the Hill or something like that, which sounds silly that was the games they were choosing between. I picked an army. I went all dragons, and I lost. But it didn't matter because it was love at first army draft, I guess you could say. HeroScape is a miniatures game that is less about the painting and the hobbying aspect and is less about simulation and more about getting the game played.
You play to win the game.
So HeroScape comes with customizable lands so you can build out a board, build out a map. So you're playing a game with miniatures, which for the most part are pre-painted. They were all originally pre-painted, and now you can still buy pre-painted if you want. You have elevation rules. Individual cards have their own army rules. It's an alternating activation type game with strategic things such as order markers that you set secretively. It's a great game. It's an evening game, just like any miniatures game. You're not going to play this thing in 20 minutes and then pack up shop. That's just not how it works. The way I usually will play team games, typically either at least 3-on-3, sometimes 4-on-4. You divide up cards. Everyone has somewhat of a limited card pool to pick from, and you draft your armies from within your selections. So you have the team building aspect. You get to work with team to say who you want to put on your team. You can get some synergies, but it's not like you just say, oh, we have to go with the droid types or the archers or anything like that. You don't have to choose an army archetype. You do mix in as you want. Then
Hello? You play to win the game.
Assuming you already built the map out, then you actually play the game. Of all the games I've played, of all the hours I've spent playing games after midnight, lock the door. HeroScape is far and away number 1 because of how often we would start at like 9 p.m. and we would be going home at 3:30 in the morning. I remember once I got pulled over on my way home from a friend's house for rolling through a stop sign, and the cop would not believe me for a bit to say like I was not drinking. I was playing HeroScape.
You don't play to just play it.
It was discontinued first in 2011. More like a once a year kind of event, weekend kind of a thing, from about 2013, 2014 through when it just got re-released, and I've started playing the new Age of Annihilation sets since then. So the game is having a bit of a resurgence for me. So it's number 3. Hey, maybe it'll pick up. This is a game that my kids will be playing Heroescape before they're playing Twilight Imperium. Would love to join a Heroescape tournament. Can't seem to find one close enough to me.
And this is where I put a trophy. If I had
One day I'll participate in one of those. But nonetheless, Heroescape is number 3. Number 2. The Lord of the Rings, the card game. I have a series that I'm in the middle of developing. 3 parts are out. It's called
The Greatest Modern Card Game.
And it refers to The Lord of the Rings, the card game. And it is
the greatest modern card game.
So what game is number 1? Is it a non-card game? Is it a non-modern card game? I'll leave the suspense there. The Lord of the Rings, the card game, provided you have enough expansions to really build out your decks, is an amazing game. It's the peak experience, in my opinion, that you can have when it comes to deck construction. Isn't just like an addiction that you eventually have to kick, like the Pokemon trading card game or Magic the Gathering or something like that that's going to run you ragged. It's a cooperative game. It is very well themed within the Middle-earth universe, which I mentioned again is my favorite universe there were games to take place in. To give you an idea, when my second kid was born, I remember rocking him to sleep, which he needed a lot of rocking to sleep. A lot of times when you're rocking, babies to sleep, it's a thing where people will, like, say, watch TV with headphones on or something like that while you're rocking your baby. What I would do when rocking was not pop on TV. I would deck build on the fan-made website RingsDB. I feel like that alone, it tells the story of why Lords of the Card Game is my number 2 game of all time. I've also been playing this for almost its entire life. My wife got it for me as a gift, pretty soon after the game was released.
It was a gift.
Early in the game's life, I would attempt a scenario even 20 times if that's what it took to defeat it. I no longer treat the game quite like that. We'll sometimes play the game on easy mode because the game can be pretty hard, and I like to try out decks that aren't power decks. I'll play it normal mode too. It depends on how many times I'm willing to give the scenario a shot. The game comes out now with campaign cards. They've had a chance to look back on 10 years almost of development of the game and then re-release the best stuff now, which is what you can buy in stores. So Lord of the Rings card game has a long history to it. It started a whole, successful subgenre of cooperative deck construction games. It includes games like Arkham Horror, the card game, and Marvel Champions. If you want to know more about it, I highly recommend you check out the series. I'll have a link to part 1 on screen. The Lord of the Rings card game is my number 2 tabletop game of all time. Before I get to number 1, some honorable mentions. I mentioned this is a list of my favorite games of all time. Games like Catan and Ticket Rider are on there for that reason. The closest any mass market game has come on the list from playing it before I realized how good board games are would be Risk, which is probably dancing just around the top 100 just because of how much I played it and the fact that actually you can play Risk in a way that's just not terrible. Play Secret Mission Risk specifically. I think that game mode actually works. I don't think Risk is not nearly as bad as like Monopoly in terms of crappy mass market games. The Pokemon trading card game, I have fun opening packs, and I'll do that with my kids. I like the Pokemon property a lot. I like the video games, but when it comes to actually playing the game, there was like a period when the first game first came out. I think I was like 11 years old or so when the first card game first came out, where I had this like thirst to play the game, and it built up this nostalgia that I still haven't satisfied to this day. But that doesn't necessarily mean the trading card game itself has made it onto my list. It's kind of like Risk, dancing outside the top 100. Modern games that I am really excited to play, but I should say, even though they're behind me, I haven't played, include Heat, Ark Nova, and Clank Legacy. I don't know if that's all of those are on screen, but those are probably the highest chance of making my list that I haven't played yet that you see on screen here. I've been actually finishing game of Doom Imperium once. I had to scoop because we got kicked out of the game store. And a couple games that I want to like, but I haven't had a great game of yet, include Scythe and Blood Rage.
You don't love me, you love the idea of me.
But without further delay, my number 1 game of all time, Pandemic Legacy. Seasons 1 through 3. Now this feels like cheating that I put all 3 seasons on there. It matches the rest of this list. I'm talking about Lord of the Rings, the card game here, where all the expansions are going to run you a couple $100. Heroescape, at least that much. They're talking about fully fledged tabletop games here. All 3 Pandemic Legacy games are a continuous story. And what a fun story that is. Pandemic Legacy might be my favorite version of any kind of media ever released. Compare it to my favorite video games of all time. Like if I made a list of just my favorite things ever, Pandemic Legacy is up there. It's up there with like and for my top video games. Well, I'm going to reveal too much here. Lock the door. Favorite movies, obviously I have like for top movies, or favorite TV shows. It's up there with like I don't need to name drop all my favorite things, I guess. I read That was great, although I recommend that one a little bit more hesitantly. But Pandemic Legacy, if you can pull it off, which means that you get someone that can like read the rule book, that isn't going to just miss something important and then cause you to give up after the first game. Pandemic Legacy is peak board gaming experience. It's spawned off an entire realm of games, genre of games. The legacy games, that is. Even though Risk Legacy came first, it was Pandemic that really did it, because Pandemic was a game where you're on the edge of your seat about what's going to happen with each game, because what happens in one game then impacts games down the line. I think it's a game that everyone has to play once. Part of what makes Pandemic Legacy so famous is because it was the first game to give this legacy experience where you're on edge of your seat because you're like permanently destroying a city that you're going to be dealing with for, you know, a few nights when you play this game in the future. In an alternate universe where, say, Charterstone comes first, is it as impactful? Maybe not for everyone else, but for me, no game has come to the same point where there's that much drama in a game as you get with Pandemic Legacy. If I had to boil down what makes Pandemic Legacy so great, I think it comes down to this. Sometimes you'll find, especially when you have a few people that are interested in the same thing, you're all chomping at the bit to get going with the hobby. So that could be, say, watching the next episode of a show together, or it could be playing a video game together, everyone getting online and getting it played. Pandemic Legacy is the best example of a reason to play a game with everyone, which is already, people get excited about board game night. You're excited for game night. Oh yeah, this is gonna be great. And you get the narrative piece on top of it. Say like, what's gonna happen? Like honestly, when people play video games together online, you're usually either just playing multiplayer games, maybe you're playing a cooperative story, but usually the people playing the story, there's not a lot of suspense behind it. You're usually not playing a cooperative video game, at least in my experience, and going like, wow, do you believe that happened? Oh man, that doesn't happen in video games. Usually one person, again, knows the whole story, and you're just trying to like get, you know, see the best scores and have fun solving the challenges. Pandemic Legacy, you get that, but there's legit drama of like, oh no, Sao Paulo, if we don't stop another outbreak from happening in Sao Paulo, the city's gonna fall. We're gonna have to put barriers up. We got 6 missions left, like that. We're gonna lose our medic. Our medic is scarred. Like we need a medic. We don't have anyone else to do that's as good at treatments. What are we gonna do about this? So you get that mix of it. Obviously, you don't have like interactive TV shows where you like watch TV together collaboratively. Pandemic Legacy is both a fun thing to do in a night and a narrative. That mix, greatest game of all time. If I had to rank which ones are best within it, I still would say Season 1 is the best. Season 0 is the next best. Season 0 is almost a little bit too refined because you know they're gonna come save you with catch-up mechanics if you screw things up. In some ways, a better designed game can be worse in that regard. Pandemic Legacy Season 2, aesthetically was pretty interesting, but was my least favorite of the 3. If it weren't for the fact that of the other 2 overshadowing it, though, it's still a good legacy game in its own right.
It's done. Yes, Mr. Frodo. It's over now.
I hope you enjoyed the top 10. If you're excited to see me update this list, be sure to subscribe to Jackson Warfield's Game Room. If you haven't tried any game in this list, I wholeheartedly recommend them, and I'll see you in the next video. There it is.